Hello and welcome to FPL Mate, your best mate for fantasy Premier League content for the 2023-24 season. My name is Dan and it's time for our Game Week 29 episode of Buy, Sell, Keep, Avoid. Now this video is going to be a little bit more for those of you who are not free hitting this game week. Although if you are free hitting in 29, I think you might get something from this video as well. So if you do enjoy it, drop a like, do subscribe if you're new around here. Let's get started. So buys are plays you probably don't have but should consider bringing in. Sells are plays you probably have but should consider removing. Keeps are plays you might be thinking about removing but I think you should keep them. And avoids are players that are pretty hyped up right now but I think they are potential traps that should be avoided. First of all, let's have a look at our scores from last game week. So we spoke about a lot of double game week players in last game week's video, so none of them have succeeded so far, but with one more game to play, I'm going to kind of park them for a minute and just focus on some of these other players. I think in general, the sells worked out pretty well. The keeps worked out pretty well as well, particularly Pedro Porro and Gross, which turned out to be really decent keeps for this game week. And in terms of the avoids, yes, Romero scored some points, but I still do prefer Unadogi and Pedro Porro for game week 29, as I did mention in last week's video. Darwin coming in clutch with the assist, although to be fair, I think he probably would have been the kind of player that you would sell for a Solanke or a Morris last game weekend. There's still a chance for those two players to outscore a Darwin. So let's move on to game week 29 and look at some buys first of all. So in the defensive positions, Flecken is going to be my goalkeeper buy for this game week. I think probably you would say that Brentford have the highest chance of a clean sheet in this game week. Now, granted, their defensive numbers have not been great recently, but they've had some horrible fixtures to play. They've played Man City twice, Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs, all in recent game weeks, and that has really damaged their defensive numbers. And I think when you look at that game against Arsenal and how well they defended throughout that game, how deep they defended, you could say that they definitely have some potential to get some clean sheets against a Burnley side that has been the biggest struggler for goals this season. I mean, yes, they scored against West Ham, but they're a terrible defense, and Burnley typically have really been struggling to create chances to score goals, and you think Brentford could take advantage of that. Big game for Brentford, of course, as they look to claw some points back to avoid dropping into those relegation areas. So I think this is a really nice fixture. Flecken is more than capable of making saves as well, with 27 in the past 5 game weeks. A couple of bonus points there as well, you might see. And yeah, maybe a clean sheet here looks pretty good with some saves. Could be a decent goalkeeper for this game week and not a bad one to take forward as well. For Doughty, he is going to be our defensive buy for this game week, but he is more of a 1 week punt. I also do want to throw out names like Rorslev at Brentford as a potential buy for this game week as well. But Doughty for this game week, I think, is probably the best defender to go for. He would be the first defender I would choose on a free hit team, for example. And if I'm looking to wildcard in 30 or 31, Doughty would probably be the first defender I'd go for this game week as well if you don't have him already. Of course, we know he's very creative. 16 key passes in the last 5 game weeks, which is very nice against a Nottingham Forest team, which again, another team that do struggle to score goals a little bit at the moment. And his creativity could mean that even if we don't expect clean sheets from Luton ever, well, at least attacking returns are a possibility, and having a set piece taker is going to be very nice in a game week where clean sheets are going to be difficult anyway. Defenders, it's going to be difficult to get points from them this game week, and I think Doughty is probably the best of a bad bunch if we're totally honest with ourselves. So for the last 3 game weeks, I've put Son as our buy. So it's about time we switch things up a little bit. And we're going to say Maddison as our buy at this game week. Not to say that Son isn't the #1 midfield pick to go for at the moment. He is, but I'm sure most of you guys already know that by this point. So Maddison is the player I'm going to recommend instead. He's started to find a little bit more form since his return from injury, with a goal in his last game, which was pretty nice indeed. His creative numbers are, pretty decent. They can still improve. And I think him being on set pieces, those free kicks, those corners, taking a lot of longer shots, but actually taking a few shots in the box more recently as well. I think it's going to be a very nice pickup for this game week if you're looking for a new midfielder. 8 million is a very affordable price. You do expect Spurs to continue their good goal scoring form, and when you are feeding the likes of Son, who is such a clinical finisher, you only really need to create a half chance or catch Fulham on the counter attack after already being a goal up, and Maddison is going to find it very easy to get assists when he's playing the balls through to the likes of Son, because yeah, like I say, he is such a good finisher. So Maddison, very much like him. I think he's probably got one of the highest potential for points this game week outside of, Son, Tony, who we're going to speak about in a moment, and obviously Watkins as well. Those are probably like the biggest 3 players of the game week, but Maddison, I think, comes in close in that kind of second level of players that you really do want to have in your team if it's possible. And speaking of Tony, we definitely need to speak about him because he's actually been hyped up more and more recently as as a potential captain alternative to Son. A lot of people will captain Son this week, but I would say Tony and Watkins, definitely two players you could consider captaining as well. And I'm quite surprised to see how popular Tony is becoming more and more recently, and not a lot of people have him either. So a really, really nice pickup for this game week. A game against Burnley. Tony, kind of just like Flecker, we've had a lot of tough games recently for Tony, and I don't think his numbers have actually been too bad considering the horrible fixtures he's had to play. Tony, of course, a player who typically scores a lot of his points through penalties as well, historically, but Brentford haven't had any penalties recently. Maybe that's due to playing kind of a little bit deeper against some really, really tough teams. But now, against Burnley, where you expect Brentford to be taking the game to Burnley a little bit more, maybe they can have more chances to pick up those penalties, that they just have this knack of getting them, and Tony has this knack of burying them as well. So having that penalty taker, having the primary goal scorer in a team up against Burnley is always going to be a good thing. And although Tony's haul potential might not be the same as like a Son or a Watkins, I still do think he is a very, very valuable player to take into Gameweek 29. So sells is going to be an interesting one this game week. I know you guys are probably going to say, isn't it so obvious to sell players who don't have a fixture? But what I've tried to do is go through some of the most popular players that you guys own right now and kind of work out which of the popular players would you kind of sell and which ones would you actually keep for future game weeks. And we're starting off with Edison. You know, whether you want to hold on to Edison for following game weeks or not, I would say that you probably wouldn't do that, because after the blank, we have Arsenal and Aston Villa, two teams we know more than capable of scoring goals, and really, really tough fixtures for Man City. So despite Edison picking up a lot of points recently, at 5.5 million, he's probably not a goalkeeper you want to take forward as well. He has currently picked up an injury as well. Not sure how significant that is. I doubt it's going to keep him out until game week 30 when, you know, all the teams return to action after the international break. But still, Edison would not be looking to keep him. A little bit too expensive and not really a player I'd like to hold on for the long term in this season. I think there's better value elsewhere in the goalkeeper position. And if you've got Purpose of Stupinian, well, now is definitely a good time to jump off him. A lot of you will probably say that the time to jump off of Stupinian was probably a few weeks ago, but after a clean sheet against Nottingham Forest, maybe some of you did hold on to him to see what you could get from that game week. Now, what I should say is from game week, well, 29, but 30 really, the fixtures just turn absolutely horrible with Liverpool, Brentford and Arsenal, the three fixtures after the international break, and it doesn't get much better from there really. Brighton really have some dreadful fixtures where we would expect them to keep very, very few clean sheets, if any. So Estupiñán, a player who has already trolled us a lot already, now is a good time to just jump off him, go into on another defender. Doughty would be a nice pickup. Rawslev would be another nice pickup. Whether you are, you know, free hitting this week, whether you are wildcarding very soon, whatever your plan is, even if you are not using chips over the next few game weeks, Estupiñán is a pretty easy sell, I think, at this point. De Bruyne, I would say, is also a pretty easy sell at this point, and I say that as a De Bruyne owner. Very, very disappointing since he's been brought into my FPL team, and I'm sure De Bruyne owners around the world will be feeling very, very similarly to me in that sense. But yeah, De Bruyne, I think just because we have a blank, we have Arsenal after that, we don't have great fixtures after that. They're okay. After that, they do start to get a little bit better, and maybe you would kind of feel, okay, maybe I kind of would like some Man City attackers beyond the next 3 or 4 game weeks. However, the problem is De Bruyne is 10.5 million and he is not providing enough output to justify that price. Not even nearly. When you compare him to a Son or a Saka, you know, he's just not putting up the numbers at all, really. And I think the big key thing here is that we're all going to be moving the likes of De Bruyne to a Salah at some point in the very near future anyway. So if you have a transfer to use now, you may as well use it to remove De Bruyne. He's probably going to drop in price over the next couple of game weeks anyway. He's a player you are not going to want to own long term. So he is a good player to just remove now, and whether you reinvest your money immediately in Salah or not is a very much a different question. But if you can bank some cash by downgrading De Bruyne now, maybe going for a Maddison or someone like that, or maybe a Bowen or whatever midfielder you like the look of at the moment, and then in future game weeks, maybe game week 30 or 31, maybe you'll have a bit of cash in the bank to upgrade one of your other players to a Salah. You could even, like, you know, move De Bruyne to Son and then Son to a Salah immediately after. That's definitely going to be an option for you. So there's different ways you could do it, different routes you can take, but all of them will involve selling De Bruyne because he's just too much money. And if you want to get Salah back into your team, which you should do, De Bruyne is going to be a player that needs to be sacrificed by anyone who does currently own him. And I'm going to put Solanke in the sell category, but I'm not happy about this one. To be honest, I wanted to put Alvarez in the forward sell category again, but I do that pretty much every game week. So before we mix things up, I would say out of the most popular forwards that you guys own right now, Solanke is probably the easiest to sell. When you compare him to, you know, the likes of Watkins and Haaland and maybe Tony, these are players you probably want to, you're more confident you want to have either for this game week or for longer term. Now, Solanke does have a decent chance of a double game week in 34, so if you are free hitting this week, I would have no problem with keeping Solanke for a little bit longer. But if you are not free hitting, if you are, you know, planning on wildcarding soon, you could potentially get Solanke back into your team anyway. But right now, Solanke is just, you know, like I say, just the easiest of the forwards to sell at the moment, because I think, you know, even looking outside of, you know, players who do have a fixture this game week, you know, Haaland, Darwin, I'd probably rather keep those guys in my team than a Solanke. So therefore, Solanke is going to have to be a sell for this game week. So for our keeps, we're going to kind of do the inverse. We're kind of going to look at some of those players who don't necessarily have a fixture this game week, but they are players I would want to hold on to. So no matter what you're doing this week, what your plan is this week, I would hold on to these players regardless. And even if you have to bench them for this game week, even if you have to play with 9 or 10 men, I would probably look to keep the players I'm about to talk about now. So first of all, Martinez. Now he's the one keep that does have a fixture this game week. He's actually the second most sold goalkeeper in FPL at time of recording. And an away fixture against West Ham, yeah, fair enough. Aston Villa aren't doing the best defensively at the moment, but I feel like just the fact that Martinez has a fixture this game week is a huge advantage. So if you're not, you know, if you're not free hitting this week, I don't really see why you would sell Martinez, right? The only people who should be selling him are people who are free hitting. If you are not, you know, keep Martinez, you know, use your transfers in other areas of your pitch, because at least he plays. And West Ham, although I do expect them to score against Aston Villa, there's always a chance that they don't. West Ham haven't been at their best form in attack maybe over the last month or so. You could say that's due in part to some missing key players, but in general, I think you just got to stick with a player who actually has a fixture. You know, even if it's a 2-pointer, I think you take that this game week rather than spending a transfer on removing Martinez. So a little bit strange to see him being transferred out by so many people. And Gabriel is going to be my other defensive keep. He hasn't got a fixture, of course, but he, for me, is very much a season keeper. He's the kind of player you hold on from now all the way on to game week 38. Every game for the rest of the season, because Arsenal defensively are just so solid. You can see in their last 5 game weeks, for example, 3.4 expected clean sheets. That is absolutely crazy numbers, and they've been pretty consistent with those numbers throughout the last few months. They really have. Of course, Gabriel also has a decent amount of goal threat, over 1 XG and 6 shots in his past 5 game weeks. It's a decent pick. It really is. And you know, even if you transfer him out now, you know you are guaranteed to transfer him back in later. So even if you are using a wildcard next game week and you think, oh, I can just wildcard Gabriel back in. A lot of us bought him for 4.7, 4.8 million, like back in the day, like way before in the season. So I think you will lose value on him if you do sell him. I think he's just a player you keep and stick on your bench. Palmer, same situation. He has been such a great player in FPL this season that I really cannot see a reason why anyone would look to sell him this game week. He's just he's just too good. Like, he has been so immense this season, and the fixtures coming up after the after the blank and after the international break are just phenomenal. So Palmer, another player I would very much leave on your bench and you know, have him for future game weeks, because you're going to transfer him back in anyway. You're probably going to lose value on him if you sell him and then buy him back again, whether that's on a wild card or not. So not a player I would look to remove from my team. He's just been basically I think this season in many ways has been the Cole Palmer season, starting off as a 5 million player. A lot of people picked him up at 4.9 million, and to see him now thriving as one of the best value for money FPL picks in the history of the game is quite incredible. So would not be looking to sell him. Remember also, Chelsea will have 2 double game weeks between now and the end of the season. We think the first one of them will happen in game week 35 or 36, although it could also technically happen in game week 34, and of course game week 37 looks pretty much a lock for Chelsea to get a double game week there as well. So lots to be excited about for Cole Palmer for the remainder of the season, and I would hate to lose him now, knowing that you would desperately need to transfer him back in as early as game week 30. So if you transfer him out now, it's 2 transfers. You know, it's not 1 transfer to remove Palmer, it's 2, because you are going to have to bring him back into your team. And Darwin, this is maybe a little bit more controversial, but I feel like from game week 30 onwards, I would like to have Darwin in my team. I think he's going to be one of the stronger players to own from Game Week 30 onwards, particularly if you are free hitting in Game Week 34, because in 34, we're not expecting Liverpool to have a double game week there, and we're expecting the likes of maybe Solanke, Højlund, Isak to have double game weeks in 34. And although those players will be very nice to have, and maybe move Darwin on to those kind of players if you are not free hitting in 34, for those of you guys who are not free hitting in 29, and you're actually looking to build towards the future, I think Darwin will actually be a key part of your team between now and the end of the season. We know he's pretty much nailed on in this Liverpool team, even when everyone is fit, which is very nice. His numbers are actually very, very strong. They're very, very good. And everything people say about, Darwin, he's not very clinical, doesn't finish his chances, I think that's kind of turning out to be a bit of a myth, really, because you look at his XG throughout the season, he is outperforming it a lot of the time. So I really, really do have faith that Darwin can continue to be a really nice FPL asset for the final part of the season. So I would not be looking to remove him. Again, another player you might be glad you held on to if you can cover him for just this game week by benching him in Game Week 29. Finally, some avoids. I thought we'd talk about some potential Game Week 29 traps that I don't think are going to work very well, that seem to be reasonably popular as well. So Vicario right now is the most popular transfer in for goalkeepers, really, outside of Onana. I thought about putting Onana as the goalkeeper avoid, but I feel like you guys surely know that you should not be buying, players who literally do not have a fixture this game week. Surely you guys know this by now, so I'm not going to be condescending like that and tell you not to buy Onana. But Vicario being the second most popular goalkeeper transfer in this game week, I do feel like I need to say that Spurs have kept just one clean sheet in the last 10 Premier League games. I think they've actually kept 2 clean sheets in the last 20 Premier League games. It's something like that. Maybe 19 or 20 Premier League games, 2 clean sheets. They really just do not keep them. And although they did manage to keep a clean sheet against Aston Villa, that is a game that could have gone very, very differently. Aston Villa had some very good spells in that game, and the game changed obviously a lot when McGinn was kind of red carded in that game. So I think a lot of people will look towards that Aston Villa game and take that as evidence that maybe Spurs are going to be able to keep more clean sheets going forward after all. But I'm just not convinced that is true, to be fair. Against Fulham, away from home, Fulham have got some good in-form attacking players at the moment, such as Muniz, and I think a player like Muniz could definitely put a goal past Spurs this game week, and therefore Vicario not going to look too great for clean sheets. One more factor in terms of the Spurs defence and why I'm not feeling too optimistic about them is the fact that Van de Ven is now injured. He's going to be out until game week 30, and Van de Ven has been a real crucial defender in this Spurs defence, really helping them out a lot. And yeah, he was fantastic last game week as well. Had a really good game, and perhaps if perhaps if he wasn't on the pitch from the start of the game, things could have been a little bit different. So Vicario at 5.3 million, not really backing him as a good goalkeeper to pick up, really. Anthony Robinson, a lot of people fancy him. He obviously got an assist recently, which I guess is encouraging. He got a clean sheet recently as well for Fulham. I don't think Fulham are a horrendous defence or anything like that, but against Tottenham Hotspur, come on, man. We know Spurs are going to score against Fulham, and therefore Robinson is not going to be a great pickup. I think Robinson's looking at probably a 1-pointer this game week, if we're completely honest, with Spurs probably scoring a couple of goals in this game. And if so, well, Robinson is not going to be worth the transfer for a 1-point player. Doesn't really seem too worth it. After that, the fixtures aren't too bad. I don't hate him as a long-term pick. I don't really hate him as a pick at all, really. But is now the time to jump in on him? I don't think so, personally. So this is probably going to be the most controversial one of the video, but I'm going to say Kulusevski is an avoid. To be fair, I don't completely hate him as a real differential pick, but that is all he is, a real super differential for those looking desperately to be different. I think there's actually a lot of better midfielders and forwards to go for this game week that are better than Kulusevski as picks. We have seen Kulusevski with 2 attacking returns in his past 4 games, which is reasonably decent, but again, is that enough? Is that enough? We're looking at a player tracking below 0.5 expected attacking returns per game, which means in any individual game week, he's more likely to not get an attacking return than to get an attacking return. And in a game week like this, where we are so desperate for attacking returns and forwards and midfielders seem to be the areas that we will get them from, I don't know if Kulusevski is going to be the best pickup. Like, he's not a terrible player. He is reasonably nailed on, though I don't know if he's 100% nailed on, given the form of Johnson and Werner recently. consistently. And you never know when Kulusevski might get that occasional and rare benching, but in general, he's pretty solidly going to play. I just don't think there's as much potential here as there perhaps is in other areas of FPL this game week. So Kulusevski, he's no Maddison, he is no Son. I would be looking to go for Maddison and Son as my Spurs attackers. If you really want to triple up, then I guess Kulusevski might be the direction to go for, but even Timo Werner and Brendan Johnson, when they're on the pitch, are far more potent FPL assets than a Kulusevski. So not really sure if I would be going for him or not. It seems a little bit too risky this game week. Just not shown enough. Doesn't have that high ceiling. Isn't a player who is, you know, consistently getting FPL returns this season either. So not really a pick for me. And Taiwo Awoniyi was previously a player we probably thought we would maybe have a punt on in Game Week 29. He looked like an interesting pickup, didn't he? But recently, it's just not been happening. I think maybe since Nuno Espirito Santo, since he has come in as the new Forest manager, Awoniyi has kind of fallen out of favour a little bit. He hasn't started either of the last 2 games. Even the game before that, he was substituted at half-time. He's played a couple of 45-minute games recently, actually. So it just looks like Awoniyi has slightly fallen out of favour. And even if you can luck out with a start from him, you know, how long is he going to be on the pitch? Is it going to be another 45-minute job, subbed at half-time? Is he going to come off at like 57 minutes or something like that? That seems to be the trend at the moment with Awoniyi, and it's really, really difficult to predict the minutes of these Nottingham Forest attackers. So therefore, is it worth just avoiding them completely? Definitely understand the upside of chasing this Luton Town game, but Nottingham Forest, there's rotation in their attack. Awoniyi, typically not the guy on penalties or anything like that either, and he isn't a player who scores super high points. He has been consistent in the past. We haven't really seen that over the last however many months. Just don't really see why he would be better than, you know, a Morris, for example, or a Muniz, or, you know, maybe another couple of forwards that you guys might be interested in. Fofana at Burnley, for example, is another forward in form at the moment. I think there's just other opportunities and available forwards to go for that are probably a slightly better pick than Awoniyi at this point, given the minutes risk that he does possess. So those are our buys, sell, keeps, and avoids. I think we've done things a little bit differently this game week, of course. It's a very unique game week 29, so we need to kind of think about what kind of players we want to own long-term, which players we would like to sell now, which players we don't want to own long-term, and actually who are the priority pickups for this game week. But hopefully, throughout this week, we are going to cover some of the best picks to go for this week, as well as talk about some differential and priority players to have in your FPL teams as well. So make sure you join me as we go through for the rest of the week. Of course, we did upload a free hit team, not just on Sunday, but actually updated it on the stream yesterday evening. So feel free to go check that out if you would like to. We'll leave a link there. Do like before you disappear. Subscribe if you are new around here. But aside from that, I will see you tomorrow with another banging video, which is going to be our 100 experts video. I'm super curious to see what they're up to, but we'll get there when we get there. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.